Welcome to Political Paradigm. I'm Terry Ikumi. The reviews of President Tinubu's tenure continue. As you may have followed in the past week, some Nigerians are of the view that President Tinubu's administration has made significant strides in some areas, but there's still so much to be done, and most importantly, when or how quickly will the impact be felt by the poor? Others fear, however, that there's no light in sight and that the president has failed in 2 years. Anyways, let's review the president's midterm performance with his special advisor on policy communication, Mr. Daniel Bwala. Welcome to Political Paradigm, Mr. Bwala.
Thank you for having me. It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. It's been 2 years since our last interview.
Exactly.
While the president marks his second term anniversary, it's been 6 months. I'm sure you're celebrating that. Since November, you've been with the president. How has it been for you, considering the backlash that trailed your appointment?
Yeah. For the backlash, it was expected. I knew that. And it was something I was prepared for. Because I knew at the time that there were going to be voices, coalition of prophetic voices. There are some that the complaint might be genuine in the sense that they feel, why not them? Or why appointing a man who left us and he came back? But there are significant number of those ones that were purely based on an agenda. However, the man who has headache is the one that takes the medicine. If the president made that choice, I thought at the time that if they respect the president, then they should allow him to make that decision. But that is behind me in the sense that majority of those people were now palace. They're very impressed with the effort we are putting in this work, and they're able to understand that in life there are some things that readily you will know, you will react to it, and there are some that with time they heal themselves. So we're good now.
Do you think it's been easy for you to market the president, considering how you demarketed him before the delay? It's been very easy for you.
Yeah, very easy. I was in your sister program with Shewan shortly after I met the president in January last year, and he asked all the questions regarding that. And I made clear at the time that there is a difference between being with government and playing the opposition. Politics is like theatrics. It's like drama. It's like play acting. If you are in the opposition and you are not opposing, then you are not doing your job. The essence of opposition is to oppose. I think where we do have problem is when the opposition do not, because you oppose is your right. But what do you use? The material for the opposition is where I think we have problem in Nigeria, because it should be fact-based. It should be providing alternative. Because if you are saying whatever we do, even if you don't like it, it's correct, but you want to create an alternative, come with a very intelligent argument. But the problem with people in the opposition lately is that they don't seem to have or are not interested in researching on the alternative to what we are doing. They just brush the same brush. And that does not give the voters or the Nigerian people that blessing of having to two separate food and to choose which one is from.
Interestingly, you've experienced both administrations, speaking against an APC administration, now working for an APC administration. So let me ask you, over time, as we review the president's 2 years in office,
right,
has the president improved on the failures of his predecessor, and in what areas?
So I will not use the word failure of his predecessor, but I would rather say the president made significant progress from where the predecessor was when the president took the oath of office. And the predecessor tried his best. I mean, everybody who gets elected tries his best. And the life is built in such a way that if generation that come after you don't improve from your work, then progress is not being made. But the progress President Bwala Tinubu has made is significant, and it is value-based progress. Because one, what climaxes administration generally, what will define his presidency would be the decision he made with subsidy and the unification of the exchange. Because these are the two things that impacted on the masses, that created the talking point, that is the product of what we are celebrating at the moment. This gives us joy because we're able to now point at the things we are celebrating in the meantime as the result of those tough decisions we took, which at the time didn't make sense to the Nigerian people. Because what it did was to provide enormous resources to deal with basic problems confronting the people. Because before that time, of course, we all know there was this report that 27 states of the Federation could not pay salaries. They were declared almost bankrupt because of reduced or lack of revenue. But today, nobody is talking about not having to pay salaries because they have received and are receiving increased revenue. They have gone to the point of doing projects. Some of them even pay their debt, both local and external. And so this is one point. But what people are not looking at, and that's my point, is that we know we practice federal system of government, but in our construct in the mind, we still think unitary system. In the sense that no matter what you give me or what comes to me as a governor, nobody cares to know whether I use it judiciously or not. The president is responsible. I had an interview a few days ago where somebody said that why won't the president overrule these governors if they are not going to use the resources? I said, that's not democracy then. The same way as president of Nigeria, the governors in their states. But enormous resources have gone to the state, either through increased revenue or local government autonomy.
I just want to hold on to something you said with regard to what the president's working on. You said he did not build on failures of the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, who many described as someone who set the country back. But you also, as a person, when you were campaigning for Atiku, said that Buhari had failed so badly that Tinubu cannot be marketed under the APC ticket because of that man. So it's surprising to hear you say that you don't want to use the word failure for that administration. Maybe you want to respond to that, that's one. But secondly, if you say he is not a failure, what projects or where did he take the country to, and where has the president continued from? Because many fear that the president is starting afresh.
So this, without having to actually belabor or focus on the administration of Buhari, but since you're asking for whether he has done anything at all, I think there are a number of things that you can see. If you look at some of those construction airports, you look at roads, even Kano to Maradi that is going on, Abuja, Kaduna. You look at some of the works in the universities. If you also look at schools, revamping of schools, there are quite a number of things he has done. Some argue could have been more than what he did given the resources at the time, because we were just borrowing. And so when I was demarcating that, that's the job of the opposition. Did you expect me to say, Buhari did well? I needed to use whatever I could use to demarcate them. But I will say this.
But was it true?
That
the things you were saying against him at the time, were they true?
They were, so truth is a conclusive thing. They were fact-based. It was my truth. My truth might be different from your truth. But what I'm saying is, if you look at President Bwala Tinubu, what he did that is now different from not only Buhari, but all other presidents that came before him was this thing that I told you that is going to define the presidency. Yes, the removal of subsidy. Because what they are telling us is what we already know, that now Nigeria is not critical. Nigeria is critical but not existential, in the sense that fundamentals of the economy are put in place. We can look from where we are and project intelligently and even from the economic standpoint. And we are doing our best to invest in those areas that are not things you can see. For example, if you start a road construction that will take years, it's a painful decision because it's not something that will happen tomorrow morning. But we are also aware of the fact that we needed to also do intervention that can be seen, which is why if you see in the education sector, you see our impact. Over 300,000 people have access to money to fund their studies. If you look at cesarean section, free in Nigeria, you look at subsidies in certain prescription drugs, life-threatening drugs. They are fact-based. They are going on now. If you look at the increase of salary, minimum wage, it is fact-based. People are being paid. If you look at the NYSC increase of the money, it is fact-based. They are getting the money. And then if you look at resources pushed down to the states, they are fact-based. They are touchable. If you look at investment actually in security. And if you noticed, until the last 4 or 5 months, after President Tinubu came to office, we had sustained security situation in the sense that we have secured environment. And then over the last 4 to 5 months, we see the resurgence. The governor of Borno said, the one of Borno is that some of the repentant Boko Haram that were rehabilitated and trained, given weapons, some of them ran to the bush. join those guys and have been coming, we see one pocket of problem here and there. Then he says, secondly, politicians are behind it. And he must be speaking based on intelligence. Once election comes close, there are certain insecurity that they are artificial. But we are not giving excuses. We are trying to deal with it. That's why anywhere president goes to in Nigeria to commission any project, first thing he will do as he arrives at town will be to charge the military in that state, the soldiers, and tell them zero tolerance. And we are seeing the progress in that regard. So there is enthusiasm. For those who care, you see, there are two sets of people in Nigeria. There are the innocent people who are concerned about their daily living. They look at their dinner table. They look at the schools of their children. And they are concerned about the indices that will change it for the better. They don't care whether you're black or white or anything. Then there are another set of people, they've made up their mind. So you cannot convince those who made up your mind. They have made up their mind that you are not doing anything. You keep talking in the hope that you appeal to their sensibility. For the Nigerian people who care, these are where we're having sleepless nights trying to better their lives. That's why we are doing projects that impact on their lives. The local government autonomy that we introduced, the monies that have now gone to the local government will address things like dispensary, hospitals, this direct primary health care in those states. It will even affect security because now local government can recruit vigilante at their local level. They can buy equipment. They can buy vehicles also for monitoring. The economic activities at the local level will increase. So because once the money goes to the local government, it will increase the purchasing power of the people. So that way you stimulate the economy. Need I say the area we're investing in entrepreneurship? So we are looking at those areas that are not praiseworthy in the immediate. But we know that once they get their root, then Nigerian people can boldly achieve and pursue their aspirations.
All right, so you've said a lot. You've touched on various sectors. Let's take them one after the other. And has to do with the economy. The subsidy removal and floating of the naira have been described as really bold moves by, in fact, the IMF recommended that initially. And so the president is being commended for it. But the result of it is not well received by Nigerians. And some say that one or the other could have been fine, and that a Nigerian system to address this issue of subsidy. We've seen many proposals with regard to how subsidy could have been gradually phased out. There are those who have said that the naira should not have been floated, at least not do both of them at the same time. I know that former Governor Rotimi Amechi also said something about this situation where he said that all these monies that are supposed to be helping the people are instead going to private pockets. So when you look at the...
It's not fact-based. Because if you ask him now to back it, he won't point at 1%.
No, he's pointing out the level of hunger in the land.
Yeah.
So over time, with regard to how the removal of subsidy and the floating of the naira, what are some of the responses of this government to the plight of the people to address the effect of the removal of subsidy and floating the naira?
So if you have noticed, when the president announced these two decisions, the president was very clear and emphatic that this will inflict pain to Nigerians. He said, I feel you, and I know what you must be going through. That's leadership, empathy. He prepared our minds. But he said it's temporary. However, he promised the Nigerian people that government will not sleep until the areas that this thing impact on them negatively is addressed. So let's take one after the other. Somebody who probably the cost of transportation has gone up because of that decision. Now it is expensive. You ask, what is government doing to affect those indices? We introduced the CNG that gave the conversion free of charge to commercial transporters with time, but because the infrastructure is small, again, you have to factor in population, and we have limited fuel station. So it has to take time before it will go everywhere. But we are seeing the beginning of the implementation and the impact on the people. You'll see a lot of testimonials here and there. This is the hope. We intend to expand it further to ensure that there is a collaboration between the federal government and the state so that even at the state level, that transportation will ameliorate the hardship. Let's come to feeding.
No, before you leave the CNG buses,
right.
The latest report we have is that the CNG buses are going to 20 federal universities. And this is something that I think a couple of weeks ago just came up.
Right.
Which means over time, the administration of the Tinubu administration did not introduce CNG buses to ameliorate the sufferings of the people with regard to transportation. So when you look at this singular gesture of releasing CNG buses to 20 federal universities, how does that help the generality of the population?
So that is why, even in development, when I was doing a course, a little bit of courses that are borrowed from public administration, when they talk about there are development that are called incremental, there are development that are called comprehensive. So this one, although has not impacted on everybody at once, but it has touched on students. In the same way NEL Fund was introduced, students are the first. But these students that we're talking about, they come from homes, from the parents that are struggling to pay the fees, or from the parents that are struggling to pay for their tuition, their transportation fee. One thing about policy is when you begin implementing, it may not be widespread, but no matter how little it is, it has concomitant effect in a value chain around family. If a man's salary increases, it is not only him. He's able to take care of the basic needs of his family, healthcare, as their aspirations, and then the other thing is maybe whether he's doing business or not. So the value chain is looking about either job created as a result of that or people who will consequently be impacted by that. You know, we have a problem with population. This is the largest black population in the world. And let me factor that to tell you why progress will have to be gradual. And the economist said that Nigeria needs an investment only in infrastructure of between 30 to 100 billion for 30 years for Nigeria to compete globally. Concluded proof. Now, this Nigerian budget for 2025 is less than 35 billion. And this budget is to cover everything, every strata of our national life. But only infrastructure we need between 30 to 100. When you see that, you will appreciate that whatever we're doing is like a drop in the ocean. But the good side is that it's a policy that starts small, just like fire. When you throw fire in the bush, at first it ignites, sparks, and then before you know, it consumes the entire bush. How will a policy experience growth or consequently reach a widespread? Some of the policies that will create the enabling environment for private sector to come in, because government has limited resources.
Mr. Bwala, it almost makes sense. But one, you agree that it's coming at a very late period because, I mean, this is 2 years into the administration. And within this period, the argument that the political class led by Bola Tinubu have been living affluently. The president has bought a new jet, has bought a new car, he's been taking trips, the people under him have been living lavishly. He's asked the ministers to cut costs, and they are not cutting costs because we still see ministers driving around with more than 3 vehicles as directed by the president. And then there's the argument about the yacht, which is still inconclusive. So when you talk about taking it one step at a time and making it, so some will argue. And this is an argument that has also been posed by opposition members, and including credible people like Wole Soyinka, dare say that you can't do this and expect this from the people. How do you respond to that, the timing of it, and the little portions with you're handing over to Nigerians?
So for the timing, there is no better time to do what the president did. In fact, we didn't have a choice. When he took the oath of office, there was no money. In fact, before he took the oath, Nigeria was already on fire. When the Naira policy was introduced, there were riots and strikes all over the place. President came into government to be confronted by protests that will lead to problems. So there is no any other option with respect to that. But with the B part that has to do with the cutting of costs that you talked about, you see, there was a rhetoric built around that. But there are issues that can be explained. The example, before the president took the oath, when Buhari was using that jet, from time to time, they've always had to take it for repairs. If the president who comes as a consequential president will go around the world and get investors, deal with that existential issue confronting us, he needs to be in a healthy jet. It makes sense for him to buy. Same applies to his car. He is the first family. He's a representation of the Nigerian nation. That's why they call him number one, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. For the yacht, the president has never used it. The yacht belongs to the Navy. At least 2 years, he has never even passed in front of the place. So people build around it. If you talk about appointees of the president, you should know that the president set KPI and he has a way of monitoring his staffers. If anything is happening in your house, your children are doing, once it doesn't come to your knowledge, you don't know it. When it comes to your knowledge and you refuse to act on it, then there is this issue of lackadaisical attitude on your part. Then secondly, so in case any minister or appointee of the president is identified, we would love a situation where the press will mention their name, their state, and what they are doing, so they can be called to order or even sacked. President won't tolerate that. It's a fact that I know. Because if president said you cannot use more than this number and you are using it, what insubordination can be greater than that? But then you look at the flip side. If you were in the private sector and you have lived a very successful life, you have so many cars, they give you official car, you choose to use your own and pay for your own fuel. It's your own issue now. So let's say you have a Bugatti or Maserati, and you decided that you're going to be driving around Maserati in the weekends, and somebody sees you with Maserati, just because you're appointed, you don't enter. But there are some people who follow the mood of the nation. Ostentatious living and flamboyant lifestyle cannot be appreciated given the state of Nigeria. Anybody who is doing that is not making sense to anybody.
The president's policies have been questioned. Economic policies, which many believe have impoverished Nigerians, even though you say, and the presidency says, hold on, give us time and everything would go back to normal. But, you know, over time, we've come to see reports, especially from the World Bank, with regard to Nigeria's foreign direct investment and question the policies of the government. And so when you say hold on for better tomorrow, some of the things that would influence an improvement in the economy would be foreign direct investment. I'm sure you agree with me, but it's plummeting already.
You have not heard about the report about foreign direct investment that came into Nigeria over the last 2 years?
What time was this report released?
The report, I don't know when it was released, but I don't think it's more than 2 months. Every foreign direct investment, foreign companies in Nigeria, foreign companies.
This report you quoted is from who?
It's from World Bank.
Now, the World Bank report that's at the, I think, April that I saw shows that Nigeria's foreign direct investment sank nearly 50%, and they are also quoting the central bank data.
Then they need deliverance, because let me be...
I'm saying they're quoting central bank data.
That foreign direct investment plummeted. Let me tell you.
We're not talking about promises made. We know that the president had gone out and made engagements with promises made to invest in the country.
There have been investment of foreign direct investment in Nigeria to the tune of at least I should think it's more than $10 billion. But let me tell you
in what
this.
sectors?
Because
the president had initially said $30 billion.
Yes.
That was questioned. That was fact-checked. And it turned out that it was in millions, not even billions.
No, it's in billions. But let me give you an example.
So you say 10, and you say 10 billion. The president says 30 billion.
You know what I mean? I'm talking about what came in.
That shows a plummeting of 50% of foreign direct investment.
Let me give you an example of World Bank. You see, IMF and World Bank is good. They don't determine what we do. We listen to them in the same way we listen to others. But I hope you know we are not going to be like a stooge to every directive or suggestion of World Bank or IMF. The record is that they have never piloted any country that thinks of them or carries their word hook, like I said.
But we'll listen to them with regard to floating the naira and removing subsidy.
No.
Even though there are arguments that we should have used the Nigerian system to deal with those two issues, yet we'll listen to the IMF.
So if you say they are criticizing that decision we took, and you say we listen to them, which one is which?
You're saying that we will not be bound by the IMF.
Yes.
I'm saying also that
Nigeria
listened to IMF and the World Bank, especially the IMF, which suggested subsidy removal and floating of the naira.
Yeah, before their suggestion, it's an economic principles. IMF or World Bank, everybody, and economics is a theory, different theories of economics. Maybe you're applying the A part, I'm applying the B part, and everyone has his own consequential value. But the point I'm trying to make is, whether World Bank or IMF, especially World Bank, in the World Bank principle, there's what they call strong country ownership. In World Bank, they call it exception to the rule. Strong country ownership means even when you have recommended A, B, and C, that is the model that should be applied in a given circumstance, that it depends on countries. Strong country ownership means tailoring that model to meet your exceptional circumstances. So I give you an example. if you say complete removal of subsidy, if our society does not permit of that, we model it to our fitting. So we pay subsidy, but not in oil. We put it in drugs, prescription drugs. We put it in other services of government, like, for example, transportation. And these things that affect the common man. Look at the policy of the government.
Which aspect of transportation are we subsidizing?
Conversion of public transport car is free. For God's sake, public transport affects who? Is the common man. Even this, our tax reform. When we say there is no payment of tax on VAT or people who do not have an earning above a certain threshold, who are those people? They are the people on the ground. Subsidy on rice to affect who? The people on the ground. Nail fund who? The child of the person that can't pay school fees. Every of the policy of President Bwala Tinubu, the target audience or the target people are the common people on the streets.
So how then do you react to those who say he's impoverishing Nigerians with his policies, especially former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who I'm just going to quote him to say that no administration has inflicted this level of hardship on the masses while showing such disregard for transparency, accountability, and responsible leadership. He says at a time millions of Nigerians are struggling to survive, government officials are living in excesses and approving budgets that benefits the elites at the expense of the common man.
It's called rhetoric. Now, let me tell you, and it fits into what I told you about not providing alternative. We all going through school. When you're making a debate argument and you want to provide in a given scenario, so let me take it on that. You want to give a given scenario. When you say the policy of the government impoverished the people, you go to the specifics, which policy and what it did and how the policy could have been avoided or a different approach could have been given. When you said lack of accountability and approving budget like that, you should be specific as to which budget in what sector and which were the areas that there were no accountability.
Let me give you an example of one of the budgets, and it's the 2025 budget.
Right.
The insertions in there, which the president signed, have been questioned. I'm sure you followed that because budget has also released that to show that we have a budget proposal for street lights, 1,477 street lights at 393 billion naira. Does that make sense to you?
The street light where?
No, the number of street lights is given. It's 1,477 street lights.
So let me tell you.
393 billion. Do you think that figure
I
makes sense?
will react to that
because
directly.
the breakdown is over 200 million per street light.
Right. So I will react to it directly. You talk about budget insertion. So somebody inserted.
And the president signed it.
And the president signed, but the president did not. He wasn't the one that inserted, right?
So the president signed it?
You know, no, I'm coming.
Without being aware?
I'm taking it, even if he was aware. Let's assume. I'm giving a worst case scenario. I'm playing the devil's advocate. Let's say it was brought to him and he signs. You see, the way this democracy is built is that it is going to be subjected to congressional supervision. If you are a leader of the opposition, what are you supposed to do rather than rhetoric? Is to charge your members in the National Assembly to ensure that they interrogate. This opposition, they are not playing opposition.
No. We don't know. Mr. Bwala, we know.
They are not the playing opposition.
We know how parliament works is minority will have their say and majority will have their way. So the reason I brought this up is to question whether the president is carrying on business as usual with the previous administration, where thoroughness is kicked out the window. Because if you say, one, you don't think, I like to think, that you're also querying how 393 billion would be budgeted for 1,477 street lights.
If it doesn't make sense, it must be subject.
I'm asking if it makes sense to you.
No, what I'm saying is, if this budget, I haven't seen it. You are reading what I have not seen.
Does it make sense to you that 393 billion naira will be budgeted for 1,477 street lights?
Now, let me give you two factors to it.
It's supposed to be a straightforward question.
No.
Because from my understanding, it doesn't make sense that I would spend 200 million plus on one street light.
Right.
When I checked 3,000 watts, I don't know if that's the street light value, but the highest I had seen so far was 3,000 watts, and it's less than 100,000 naira.
Right. So what I'm saying is not far from your point. I don't make conjecture, and I don't react to hypotheses. I react to facts. Let's assume, I say in the worst case scenario, that what you said is actually in the budget. the president will believe, and more than anything else, more than even us, and we are talking about democracy. What is the role of the opposition in the given circumstance, if I may
Yeah,
ask?
you're pointing to the opposition so much.
No, I'm giving.
But most importantly, you owe the Nigerian people more than you owe the opposition.
Correct.
So your response should be how Nigerians perceive this and to question whether this administration has lived up to expectation by acting differently from what Nigerians have almost come to get used
And
to.
my response was direct. First, you quoted a statement of an individual who comes from the opposition. And in response to that, I said, if what he said is rhetoric, because it should be fact-based and specific.
I went on to give you a
So I'm
fact,
coming. No,
which
I'll
is
come.
the budgetary
So, but
provision.
you are not the opposition. So let us.
So
you
my
have to
job is to
agree
hold
with me.
government accountable as
Good.
well.
So then you have to agree with me that I've been able to point to the fact that what the opposition said is rhetoric. Then I can proceed to answer your question.
Please proceed to the most important part of it, which is
You brought
this
that up.
question.
Good. So the question I'm saying is, but see, the power of the purse lies in the National Assembly. That's where our democracy. Appropriations, president can say anything. National Assembly must scrutinize it. If president, that's why they call separation of power. If he errs, the National Assembly should call him to order. I have not heard a single opposition act as of today pointing to this fact that you've mentioned. Sadly, even the leader of the opposition didn't point. So you did more research than him.
So does that exonerate the president from signing a budget which he probably didn't look into? Because you say even if the president didn't see this, the opposition should have seen it.
So I'll give you a scenario. The president, I do not expect that. Have you seen a budget document? The president will he would have to hand over power to the vice president and go to university and do PhD to read that thing.
Not entirely. He has advisors. He has people.
Fine. So you are now giving. I'm now taking you. I love it. You are now. I'm taking you to instances and circumstances where the president can take a decision, although he is liable to it. But you can look at the fact of the case and say, democracy envisioned that there could be a circumstance like that. That's why there should be check and balance. So don't tell me, nobody can convince me that line by line by line from the first to the last that the president reads it. He's assisted by advisors, economic advisors. He's also assisted by congressmen who are from his party. And I'm saying the worst case scenario, let's say he approves it. The Congress has the power to question that. It is not just with budget, it's with every other decision that the president makes. That is why the Congress can summon any appointee of the president to come and answer question in that place. Send that question to the Congress.
Let's talk about borrowing now.
Okay.
Now, I'm also going to quote Atiku, and I hope we'll speak to the substance of what he's talked about, not his person.
Right.
He says that even more troubling is the scale of borrowing under this government. When President Tinubu assumed office in 2023, Nigeria's total public debt stood at approximately 49 trillion naira. In just 2 years, that figure had skyrocketed to 144 trillion naira. Now, he says that while the federal government racks up debt, state governments have shown more discipline, reducing their debt levels from 5 trillion to 3 trillion. And the implication is clear that the federal government under Tinubu is the primary driver of Nigeria's current debt crisis. This is despite the payment of the IMF loan.
So that's the point. So I will also rank this one as rhetoric. If you say anyone that is based on governance and economy, I will admit to it. This one too, I rank it as rhetoric, because if you question borrowing and you believe to have at least a sizable knowledge of economics, you know that the borrowing is for a purpose. You should be able to say when we borrow, we ate or we misused it. Then your argument can make sense. But you cannot in one breath call borrowing. You are not being fair to the masses by giving all of the facts together. You are economical with the facts. But this is my answer. Every borrowing is for a purpose. As a government, when the president came, we have 73 trillion already incurred from the previous administration. We don't have money on ground, and we have things to do. Every country of the world borrows, including the United States of America. But What people, so he should not be even talking about borrowing. He should be interrogating what we use it for. Then people say, intelligent conversation. But when you say borrow, will you not borrow? Didn't they borrow when he was vice president? So that's the point number one. Point number two, when we borrow, they were specified and attached to specific project. We have been able to establish ourselves that we are now credit worthy because we have affected the fundamentals of the economy to the point where we have increased revenue. The removal of subsidy and the unification of the foreign exchange has given us resources. And then you look at the expansion of the tax net. It is giving us revenue. So whatever we borrow, if you go to borrow, they will say, show us that you are credit worthy, that when you borrow, you can pay. Why are they willing to give us? I have even read where the opposition made a conclusion of the president's request for this budget cap, for this borrowing cap. They said that the president has even borrowed, when they know it is an estimation of what can be borrowed across all levels of government. So they are distorting facts and they are distorting the truth. But our response to it is that we are investing in infrastructure. You know Lagos to Calabar that we commissioned about 2 days ago. That is touchable, relatable, and fillable.
Will that project be completed before the president's tenure, if he gets a second term?
One good thing about planning is that any government that only plans a project that will conclude when he's there is not a visionary government.
Yes, but we have a very terrible history of abandoning projects here.
If we
so one, how believable is this project?
Right.
And another thing is the amount of money that's sunk into it. Sometimes it's discouraging when other governments come in and perhaps do the checks and balance and realize that this should not have been the amount of money that we should have put into this kind of projects. Let's let it go. I remember that former Governor Rotimi Amechi had a light rail project in Port Harcourt that was abandoned because of the hefty nature of that project.
So if I'll give you a case of Oga Rotimi. Assuming in delivering the governance, he also worked hard to make sure that his successor comes from his political leaning and ideology, the project will continue. But even when you are not sure of who will succeed you, no development plan around the world has ever been made to last during the pendency of the presidency or head of state of anybody. Even the military era, when they projected and developed development plan, it was not built to happen and end during their tenure. Most of the project in Japan and China, they project 100 years. That 2 generations would have probably come and gone. But that's the way to plan. You have to project higher. Vision 2020 was delivered in 1996 or 97. You have to project high. Anybody who sets up a goal in life only because it can be achieved has defined his limitation. So President Bwala Tinubu looks at it from the point of view of putting structures in place for the future of Nigeria. It doesn't matter whether he's there today, 1 term, 2 term, or whatever term. But he wants to lay the foundation that the future generation will find life easy to achieve their aspirations in life.
The issue of security is another aspect that the president is considered to have failed based on remarks from a number of analysts. Opposition. I saw that coming.
Let me suggest.
But let me. But let me tell you this. Okay. Let me tell you this. We've heard federal lawmakers who are in the APC from the north, where insecurity is rife, openly say that the insecurity is getting worse. You, on the other hand, you're from the north, and you visited the Chief of Defense, Minister of Defense for State Bello Matawale, and you commended him, saying he's pushing the agenda of President Bwala Tinubu. Meanwhile, there are those who are calling for the resignation of all of them, because of the failure of security in the north.
Let me start with him. You see, if you look, he's Minister of the Federal Republic State Defense. He, among many ministers, is one of the most pragmatic ministers. I'll just give you an instance. And he is a result-chasing minister, wanting to find solution. The day I visited him, which was the only day I visited him, and we had a conversation, not about what he wants to do, but what he's already doing, appealed to me because I am a security expert. And I know when you're facing a problem, the best approach to dealing with it. He's looking at all of these things from even intelligence point of view, in terms of collaboration.
But does it bother you that he's state governor, is making heavy allegations against him, which suggests that he could be a problem.
Now, the state governor is a one-term governor who will need re-election. The state governor also fears that since the minister had only first term, that the minister might look. Whenever you see scenario like that, don't build anything that they say out of that.
Now this is the problem. Now, this is the problem because the average northerner who's listening to you now on this security matter fears that you could fear that you're politicizing it. You're not looking at the substance of it, which is insecurity.
Right.
But you're considering that you're questioning the motive of the state governor when he talks about security because you think he may be protecting his political stool.
So look at it. What are the particulars of his allegation? My discipline of law means is that once you frame a charge, once you formulate an issue, you must give particulars of that. You drive your narrative and case theory from the particulars. The particulars are the meat. What is the particulars? What are the particulars of his allegation against the minister?
But you don't have that either.
No, but when I listened to him on television, he said the minister does not want him to govern in that state. Is it fact-based?
But you are talking from a point that suggests that you do not believe anything he said.
That governor is my friend.
I'm looking at it from the insecurity part of it. And it's not just in Yobe State or Zamfara State.
Yes.
I'm looking at the entire northern region. And I'm not even focusing on just the northwest or northeast. I want the entire northern region because as someone who's covering parliament, every day or every other day, there is a complaint about insecurity in one constituency or the other in the north.
That complaint is valid. If you are leading as a government and the masses are not talking, then you are not leading. The fact that they are reacting, they are giving you a feedback, it means you are doing something right. And they also have a faith in you that you can correct it. That's why let's make our voice heard so he can correct it. To that is a credit to us. Because there are others, people just leave it like that and take laws into their hands. But let me cascade down to the details and the intrigues of this security. Yesterday we had a meeting in Lagos. We were addressing the editors, some of these execs in the media. And someone asked a question about bandit kidnapping. And he said he's a civilian, that if you give him that responsibility, he will wipe it. He will end that thing immediately. I asked him a question. And he immediately said, these Fulani headers. I said, that's where the problem is. Profiling. And I told him, those guys you see moving the cattle in the bush don't own the cattle. They are contracted to move it. The owners of the cattle are retired generals, business mogul. Some of them are Igbos, Yorubas, Hausa. Every tribe that is in that transaction, in that business, people do it. But in dealing with insecurity, you look at those boys that move around. If you want to find a lasting solution in a situation like that, that is from the government point of view, you go down to the details and find the root causes of the problem. And that's what the president has been telling governors. Go and find the root causes. Talk is cheap. It's easy to say something without digging deep. Let me also push it further. There was a time kidnapping in Nigeria was just zeroed to one tribe or one religion. After a while, there was a case in Jos where the secretary of the church organized his own kidnap so that the church will pay ransom. Crime is crime. And we're in an era where we have what we call crisis economy. In those days, people commit crime based on ideology. Now people commit crime like the way people enter business and register company. You commit crime to make money. Everybody wants to be a player in the conversation to stop insecurity. Government is dealing with that. Let me take you down to Maiduguri. Maiduguri, Boko Haram people that were arrested, rehabilitated, trained, fed, are now armed. They go and change and join those people. It's ideology. You cannot use that and then now say the government has failed in insecurity. And if we want to be honest with ourselves, let's just be honest. Until the last 4 or 5 months, we have enjoyed relative peace. And what government does, even with the case of this Boko Haram going back and joining those ones, is to re-strategize how you deal with repentant Boko Haram. The same thing with other elements that commit crimes around.
But the question is the government re-strategizing?
Yes.
I listened to a trending video of Honorable Ahmed Jaha, who is very vocal about the insecurity in his region. He represents Chibok Damboa in the House of Representatives. He compared situations over time and said that there were instances where mercenaries were used to fight insecurity, I think during the Jonathan administration.
Correct.
And he questions the political will of this government to fight insecurity because it's almost as though it's business as usual. The same strategies are being utilized.
We have
What kind of
never
results?
consulted any mercenary. We don't believe in consulting mercenaries because we have seen the models around the world that is not working. The Wagner Group, for example, everywhere they went to deal with insecurity, they will end that immediate and another one will come up because they are private
So
contractors.
mercenaries is not an option.
It's not an option at all. In fact, if you look at it from the broader scale, any activity of a mercenary in the country is the strongest form of national security threat. What is it that we don't have armed forces that will deal with that? What we are doing?
Overwhelmed.
No, we are focusing on. So this is how you drive fight in the modern world. Conventional war, excellent, but then we have moved to the point where you use technology. Soldiers, if you have modern high-tech drones, you have these choppers. I mean, I don't know, these just like chopper, this gunship, right? If you have devices for reconnaissance, if you have machines that will track and trace, all these technological things, we are investing in so we can deal. Because these guys in the forest, we've introduced forest guards to cope this idea of people incursion into people's lands. You have to rethink, you have to think out of the box. Nigerian soldiers, with the record and the history they've had around Africa, you leave them to go and look for mercenary for what?
But we've heard this, we've seen videos of soldiers complaining about lack of equipment to fight, lack of military equipment to fight insurgency. And when you have a chief of naval staff who is calling for prayers to tackle insecurity.
We're a nation of religious people.
Yes.
So even when you are fully prepared, so let's say when you are leaving your home, you knew you were ready for a job, you knew you were prepared for today, you knew you had your resources for everything, but you say a prayer before you go into the day. That was the context in which you were saying we need prayers. Not as though the Nigerian army cannot fight insecurity, therefore we need some angels from heaven to come. But Nigeria is a nation of misconception, so people can spin out narrative. But dealing with insecurity is a collective responsibility. I give you instances of my place where the villagers, because of these threats to their lives, have even some turned themselves into intelligent agents for the Boko Haram. So soldiers are in your city to preserve and to protect you. You're providing intelligence to the people. These people are able to assess the capability and capacity of the armed forces, and then they attack them. We have to look at that.
Let me ask you a question. I want us to leave this because we're almost out of time.
Right.
But if the security situation persists, will the president be able to campaign on promise of addressing insecurity?
No, you see, there is no insecurity persisting anywhere. We're dealing with it.
Yeah, but there's a resurgence.
Where? In few places. All the local government are under our control. Right?
It doesn't take away the concerns that have been, like I told you, every day during plenary, there is one complaint or the other of insecurity.
That is how the parliament is built. Every single day in every city in America, there is a complaint of insecurity. Every day, there are a series of complaints about insecurity in London. You cannot even, in streets of London now, move around 8 p.m. This small petty
But
thing.
there are no mass deaths.
No. So, are there not some Al-Qaeda activities in the past?
Yeah, in the past. I mean, you see how countries have been able to, reduce that to the barest minimum,
And
especially the UK that you mentioned.
So when the president before the president became president, before he took the oath of office, you have been in this city. Didn't you guys report how the Boko Haram killer soldiers in Buhari, prison breaks all over Nigeria? They even said they were going to come to the presidency and take Buhari. During the daytime in people's homes, there were kidnappings. We don't have them now. Can we please appreciate what we have done? You see, this insecurity resurgence that you're talking about, the lawmaker that is complaining, valid complaint, I love people that are active and alive to the plight of their people. But I don't think the lawmaker has more intelligence than the governor of the same state. And the governor gave us the magic words. This Boko Haram repentant that went into the bush, they are the ones coming. Remember, when you have trained someone, that's the danger of people changing. The people are aware, of your capability, your capacity, your manpower. They are aware of your modus operandi. In some cases, they may probably know 50 to 70% of your know-how. When they go back, certainly the formation in the bush will not be as the same as they were. These are emerging issues and challenges we face every day. Americans were fighting the Houthis. Do you know how many fighter jets that sank in the Atlantic Ocean?
So the thing is, are you saying that ahead of the election, the president would reduce the spate of insecurity? Or are you saying that are you saying that these little pockets, as you put them, of insecurity, especially in the north, will not matter going forward if the president begins to campaign for re-election?
You know, President Buhari, in the build-up to that election that he eventually won, was asked by foreign media. They said, with the insecurity in Nigeria, Jonathan shifted it to another, 2 weeks or so. Will you be able to conduct election? Do you know what he said? I saw the video, I laughed. He said, that is balderdash. He said, in Iraq, in the midst of war, election was conducted. So he's trying to say is, no matter the fight against what we stand for, democracy, we will do democracy, we'll conduct election. But to answer the point regarding to my principle, we wouldn't even have to wait till election. We would decimate this thing to a large extent. Insecurity, I have not seen anybody, even the opposition that are aiding and abetting, they don't want insecurity. When these people kidnap our people, they don't say, are you in APC or PDP? When they kill our people, they don't say that. It is a collective thing. I have seen opposition around the world. After the 9/11, when George Bush approached the Congress for money to wage a war against terrorism, both the Democrats and the Republicans, he asked for 40 billion, they gave him 80. We are looking to the point where people will be nationalistic and patriotic. And even when you criticize, have facts to back it up.
Very well then. As we look towards, because the politics is building up now. I wish it wasn't this early, but it is what it is.
Not at our instance. Not at our instance.
Please don't say that. What's your reaction to the concerns of nepotism, especially from the north, against the president?
So I know that there are politicians who have high expectation that when the president became president, they are going to form integral part of his government. When they didn't
northern politicians,
when they didn't find that in the immediate, they started spinning nepotism and the rest. We have looked at appointments of critical and strategic places in government. We have seen Nigeria represented. But the other thing is that if you are used to an appointment and tomorrow someone else is being given the opportunity, and you say that there is nepotism, you have not taken your time to look at this other person from probably minorities or other parts of the country that have not had the opportunity. The northern people in this government are 110% committed. In fact,
they are?
Yes. The error of generalization in this case is that the word north is used in its compound sense, but it is just few elite in the north that are making the noise. The rest of the north are particular about dealing with hunger, insecurity, lack of education, and they don't care who is in power.
Oh, absolutely. I think that also stems from the conversation that the Northern Elders Consultative Forum had, right, where they also talked about a coalition because the hunger in the land is crazy.
Yeah.
And they also talked about engaging state governors to be able to, address the situation. So that brings a question of the northern elites, whom you say are nothing.
No, I will never say that.
I
will never say the other elites are nothing. I am saying that we use the word the north in the compound sense as if you're talking of everybody in the north. But there are only few elites who are driving this. It will also be nice to look at other elites who don't subscribe to that. Because I know that the idea, okay, if a pan-regional body takes a position, because one of the age-long principle of the Elders Forum that I've always known is apolitical.
No endorsements, yes.
Thank you. So when you see an emerging trend of that, because one politician didn't get ministerial position and therefore he wants to use this element.
They're not endorsing anyone. They are simply saying that the president has not lived up to expectations
in 2 years. Buhari spent 8 years. What did they say? He spent 1, 2, 3, but there was no suspension. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 8 years.
So you think it's unfounded?
It's political.
It's political.
Yes. I prefer them to come out and not say He's not lived up to expectations.
Okay.
Talk about specifics of what is afflicting the North and demand that the president should meet with that.
Do you think that with this kind of reaction from the North, that especially with the coalitions going on, do you think that the president stands a chance in the North? Because what we hear is that he is practically compelling the opposition members in the South to join the party so that he grasps the entire South and then takes a beat of the North.
So this arithmetic of politics will always be played by different players, right? I know that the president is popular in the North. I have accompanied the president to Katsina. I saw people come out from the airport right to town. Human beings that will vote, although there are children and women as well. I don't know if those ones don't qualify as Northerners. I know of Borno and Yobe and some of these other places where people are hailing him and supporting him. I know they have expressed their fears. They've expressed their concern. We need you to address insecurity. We need this, we need it, but we believe in you. So the fact that I complain that you have not given me food does not mean I've changed my mind from you. But the elements that are talking about coalition, on team and the rest, you know and I know there are few elements. Okay. And these are people who believe it is in their DNA to be in government forever.
Well, we'll have this conversation again when the coalition is formed.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Bwala, I'd like to thank you for coming. But let me ask you one quick question, and
Right.
Perhaps you just want to address it. If it is nothing or if it's something, there's a trending video of President Bola Tinubu ignoring Governor Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State. Is that something to be bothered about? Or
No, it's just
nothing?
an oversight. He didn't see it. You know,
He didn't
when
see
crowd,
the
yes, when
governor.
crowd are coming to greet you.
No, it
you're
wasn't a
shaking
crowd.
hands.
They were all lined up together.
No,
he
no,
greeted every governor.
No, the
and
governor
then
was a bit back, a bit at the back.
From what we saw. But
If you
that's
play
the stance you want
if you
to
play
take,
it, you see. So, okay, previously, when he arrived at Lagos, was the governor not in the airport to receive him? Didn't they shake?
was he? Because we saw the deputy governor receive him, not the governor.
No, but in the activities of the president in Lagos, the governor has been involved in everything. Let me tell you something about president. The president, even when Ambode had issue with him, he was still shaking Ambode. He was in events with Ambode. I remember one of his public lecture, Ambode ran and joined the group to take pictures. People were laughing. If there is no, don't listen to these people.
If you say so. Mr. Daniel Bwala, thank you very much for coming on Political Paradigm.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have in Political Paradigm. I've been speaking with policy advisor of President Bola Tinubu. If you'd like to catch this episode, please go to YouTube and search Political Paradigm or go to channelstv.com. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.